Have you ever seen someone drop a tea bag into a pot of meat sauce, or place an ice cube in the middle of a burger while it's grilling, or even add a pinch of salt to their morning coffee? It sounds like someone is trying to ruin dinner, right? But the funny thing is, in many British kitchens, these slightly crazy-sounding tricks actually work, not because British people enjoy doing things in a strange way, but because over many generations they discovered small cooking shortcuts that are surprisingly effective. Today we're going to explore 31 British cooking hacks that sound wrong, but somehow work incredibly well. Story 1. The teabag and meat sauce secret. There is a small secret in many pubs across the UK that most people never notice. One experienced chef once told a story about a new kitchen trainee who walked in and saw him drop a black teabag into a pot of gravy gently simmering on the stove. The trainee basically froze. "Chef, are we making dinner or preparing for afternoon tea?" But the chef just shrugged and calmly said, "Give it 2 minutes." 2 minutes later, when the teabag was lifted out, something interesting had happened. The gravy that once looked a little pale had turned into a deep, glossy brown, like it had been slow-cooked for hours in a fancy restaurant kitchen. The secret is the tannins in black tea, which boost both color and depth of flavor. The funny part? Customers in the pub often nod approvingly and say, "Wow, this gravy is amazing. Must have simmered for hours." No one realizes the secret was just a cheap teabag and 2 minutes of patience. Story 2. The strange ice cube in a burger. There was a dad who was very proud of his weekend BBQ skills. Every time the weather was nice, he would fire up the grill turn on some classic rock and proudly announce, "Today we're having proper American-style burgers." There was just one small problem. His burgers were always a little dry. Not burnt, not terrible, but the kind where you take one bite and immediately reach for a drink. One day a friend suggested a trick that sounded slightly ridiculous. Try putting a small ice cube in the middle of the patty before grilling it. The dad looked at the ice cube, then at the meat, and asked, "Are we cooking burgers? Or making soda?" But he tried it anyway. As the burger sat on the grill, the ice cube slowly melted and created steam inside the meat. The result was a burger that stayed much juicier and cooked more evenly. For the first time in years of backyard BBQ, the whole family agreed. Today's burgers are actually better, and the secret turned out to be a tiny ice cube from the freezer. Story 3. The secret to crispy pub-style roast potatoes. If you've ever eaten roast potatoes in a British pub, you know the feeling. The outside is crispy like a crunchy shell, but the inside is soft and fluffy like mashed potatoes. Many people think the secret comes from expensive ovens or special goose fat, but there is actually a small trick that many pub chefs know very well. After boiling the potatoes for a few minutes, they don't just put them straight into the oven. They sprinkle a small pinch of baking soda over the potatoes. It sounds a little suspicious. Baking soda is usually for baking cakes, not cooking potatoes. But when the potatoes are shaken with a bit of baking soda, their surface becomes slightly soft and rough. Once they go into a hot oven, that rough outer layer turns into the perfect crispy crust. The result is potatoes with a crunchy golden outside and a soft fluffy inside. And the funny thing is, the secret behind those famous pub potatoes is just a tiny pinch of baking soda from the kitchen cupboard. Story 4. The mysterious pinch of salt in coffee. If you see someone sprinkle salt into coffee, your first reaction will probably be, "Wait, did someone just ruin my cup of coffee?" It sounds strange, but some experienced chefs and baristas actually swear this trick works. The idea is surprisingly simple. A very small pinch of salt can reduce the bitterness in coffee, especially when the brew is a little too strong or slightly burnt. The salt doesn't make the coffee taste salty. Instead, it softens the bitterness and makes the flavor feel more balanced. In fact, this trick has existed for a long time. Some sailors in the past even added salt to their coffee because the water they used was often slightly salty. The funny part is that when people try it, many will say, "Wow, this coffee tastes better today." But if you reveal the secret that there's a tiny pinch of salt in it, they usually look at you like, "Wait, did I just get tricked?" Story 5. The bacon trick that starts with a cold pan. Most people cook bacon the same way. They turn on the stove, heat the pan as fast as possible, and then drop the bacon in. The sizzling sound is amazing, but the result is usually very familiar. One end of the bacon is crispy and burnt, while the other side is still a little soft. The strip curls up like it just finished a yoga class. But many cooks in classic breakfast diners do the exact opposite. They place the bacon into the pan while the pan is still cold. Then they turn the heat on to medium. It sounds wrong, but as the pan slowly heats up, the fat inside the bacon melts gradually. That allows the bacon to cook more evenly and stay flatter. The result is bacon that's crispy from end to end with no burnt spots and no chewy sections. The first time people see this method, they usually think, did they forget to turn on the stove? But after trying it themselves, they realize something interesting. Sometimes the best way to cook bacon is simply not rushing to heat the pan. Story 6. The vinegar trick for perfect poached eggs. Poached eggs sound simple. Just crack an egg into hot water, right? But if you've ever tried it at home, you know it rarely goes that smoothly. Instead of a neat round egg like the ones you see in restaurants, you usually end up with something that looks like a cloud of egg whites drifting around the pot. The whites separate and float everywhere, while the yolk drifts around like it's trying to escape. But many chefs have a very simple trick. Before adding the egg, they pour a small spoon of white vinegar into the water. It sounds strange, but the vinegar helps the egg whites coagulate faster when they hit the hot water. As a result, the whites wrap neatly around the yolk and form a tidy, beautiful poached egg. The interesting part is that this small amount of vinegar doesn't make the egg taste sour. It just quietly does its job. And suddenly your poached egg looks like it came straight from a fancy brunch cafe. Story 7. The wooden spoon that saves your pasta pot. Anyone who has cooked pasta has experienced this moment. You turn your back for 10 seconds and when you look again, the pot is bubbling over like a tiny volcano. The starch from the pasta creates a thick foam, and before you can react, the water starts spilling all over the stove. But in many kitchens in Britain and Italy, there is a very simple trick. Just place a wooden spoon across the top of the pot. It sounds more like a grandmother's kitchen myth than real science. But when the boiling foam touches the dry surface of the wooden spoon, the bubbles break and collapse. That slows down the foam from overflowing. It's not a permanent miracle. If you leave it too long, the pot can still boil over. But the wooden spoon buys you a few precious seconds, just enough time to come back, lower the heat, and save your kitchen from a full pasta disaster. Story 8. The raw garlic trick for toast. Most people, when they think of garlic bread, imagine a pretty long process. Butter, minced garlic, the oven foil, and a lot of waiting. But in many European kitchens, there is a much simpler way. First, you just toast a few slices of bread until they're nice and crispy. Then take a clove of raw garlic and peel it. And here's the part that sounds a little strange. You rub the garlic clove directly onto the hot toast. The rough surface of the bread works like a tiny grater. The garlic gently shaves off in a thin layer, leaving a strong aroma but not an overpowering bite. After that, just drizzle a little olive oil and add a pinch of salt. And that's it. No complicated garlic butter. No oven required. The result is a crispy slice of bread with fresh garlic flavor and incredible simplicity. And the funny thing is, after trying it, many people say, wait, so why have we been making garlic bread the complicated way all these years? Story 9. The frozen ginger trick. Ginger is one of those ingredients people buy with a lot of hope. You pick up a big piece of ginger at the supermarket and imagine all the things you'll cook this week. Stir-fry soups, ginger tea, maybe even something fancy and Asian-inspired. But then reality happens. 3 days later, the ginger sitting in your fridge starts to soften, wrinkle a little, and look like it has had a very rough week. And when you try to grate it, those long fibrous strands keep getting stuck in the grater, turning the whole process into a small kitchen struggle. But there is a very simple trick. Instead of leaving the ginger in the vegetable drawer, just throw the whole piece into the freezer. Once the ginger freezes, something interesting happens. You can grate it easily, and the ginger falls into soft, snowy shreds that are fragrant and fine. You don't even need to peel it first. And suddenly, that small piece of ginger can last for weeks, instead of turning into a science experiment in your fridge after a few days. Story 10. The pinch of sugar in tomato sauce. There's a familiar moment when cooking tomato sauce at home. You taste it, and the first reaction is usually, a little too acidic. You add salt, still acidic. You add more seasoning, still acidic. That's when many cooks use a small trick that sounds a bit suspicious. They add a pinch of sugar. It sounds like you're about to turn spaghetti sauce into dessert. But sugar doesn't actually make the sauce sweet. It simply balances the acidity of the tomatoes, especially when using canned tomatoes or ones that aren't fully ripe. Suddenly the flavor becomes rounder, smoother, and the other seasonings start to stand out. The funny thing is, if you tell someone your secret is adding sugar to the sauce, they'll usually give you a very suspicious look. But when they taste it, the reaction is almost always the same. Why does this sauce taste so much better? Story 11. The trick to waking up your spices. Many people cook curry or stews in a very familiar way. They put everything into the pot, meat, water, spices, and then just wait for it to cook. The dish still turns out okay, but sometimes it feels like something is missing. Chefs call this a flat flavor. In many professional kitchens, there is a small but very important step. Before adding water or broth, they place the dry spices into hot oil and cook them for about a minute. This process is called blooming spices. When the spices hit the hot oil, the aromatic oils inside them start to release. Suddenly the kitchen fills with the smell of cumin, turmeric, pepper, or garam masala. After just 1 minute, the dish already has a much deeper flavor base. The funny thing is, this step only takes about 60 seconds, but it can turn an ordinary curry into a dish that makes people ask, "Wait, did you learn this recipe from a restaurant?" Story 12. The lemon trick that keeps apples looking fresh. If you've ever sliced apples for a fruit salad or a lunchbox, you've probably seen this happen. The moment they're cut, the apple slices look fresh, bright, and perfectly fine. But just a few minutes later, they start turning brown like they've already had a very long and exhausting day. That doesn't mean the apples have gone bad. It's just a natural reaction called oxidation, which happens when the inside of the apple is exposed to air. But there is a very simple trick. Just squeeze a little lemon juice over the freshly cut apple slices. The acid in the lemon slows down the oxidation process and helps the apples stay lighter for much longer. The best part is you don't need much. Just a few drops are enough to keep the apples looking fresh for hours. So next time you're making a fruit salad or packing a snack, remember this little trick. One small lemon can save an entire plate of apples from looking like they were forgotten yesterday. Story 13. The ice water trick for taming raw onions. Raw onions can be a very dramatic ingredient. In salads or burgers, they can taste great, but sometimes they are so strong that people almost tear up even when they're not cutting them. You take one bite and it immediately feels like the onion just announced, "I am the star of this dish." But there is a small trick many chefs use. After slicing the onion thinly, they soak the slices in a bowl of ice water for about 10 minutes. It sounds almost too simple to work, but the cold water helps pull out some of the sulfur compounds that create the sharp bite. The result is onions that stay crisp and fresh but taste much milder. When added to salads or burgers, the onion no longer attacks your taste buds, it simply adds a pleasant crunch and a gentle flavor. And the funny part is, the secret only requires a bowl of ice water and a little patience. Story 14. Salting eggplant before cooking. The trick to reduce bitterness. Eggplant is a fantastic ingredient for many dishes from moussaka to ratatouille. But if you've ever cooked eggplant at home, you know the frustration when the cooked slices turn out bitter or soak up too much oil. Many people think the only way to improve it is to pick very ripe eggplants or fry them in a lot of oil. But British home cooks and many pub chefs have a very simple trick: sprinkle salt over the eggplant slices before cooking. After about 30-45 minutes, the salt draws out excess water and removes some of the compounds that cause bitterness. At the same time, the spongy texture of the eggplant compresses, so when you fry or saute it, it absorbs less oil and doesn't become greasy. The result is a dish that remains tender, mild in flavor, and very pleasant to eat. The funny thing is, this trick is extremely classic, yet many modern chefs still admit a pinch of salt before cooking can save the entire dish. Story 15. The wet knife trick. Cutting sticky foods like magic. Anyone who has tried cutting marshmallows, brownies, or sticky fruits knows the pain. The knife sticks to the food, leaving messy surfaces, crooked pieces, and what looks like an art disaster. But chefs and bakers have a very simple trick: dip the knife in water before cutting. It sounds almost too easy, but the effect is surprisingly amazing. A thin layer of water between the knife and the food allows the knife to glide through without sticking. You can cut brownies, neatly keep marshmallows intact, and slice hot bread without squashing it. Some even dip the knife in warm or cold water, depending on the food, for the best results. The funny part is, this trick is so simple that you'll wonder, how have I been baking all this time without knowing this? Just a few seconds of dipping the knife can turn cutting sticky foods into a very relaxing task. Story 16. The metal tin trick, keeping cookies crispy. Imagine you just opened a tin of cookies, fragrant, crunchy. But just a few days later, the cookies go soft, bending like they're doing yoga. British grandmothers have a very simple but effective trick. Keep cookies in a metal tin instead of a plastic container. It sounds old-fashioned, but the science behind it makes perfect sense. A metal tin maintains just the right amount of moisture, blocks light and unwanted odors, and keeps cookies from going soft or absorbing other smells from the kitchen. Plastic containers, on the other hand, often make cookies suffocate and soften quickly. The funny part is, many people think, oh, but plastic is more convenient. But open a plastic container after a few days and compare it to a metal tin, and you'll immediately understand why grandmothers stick with their old-fashioned tins. A simple classic trick that keeps every cookie crunchy, just like it came out of the oven. Story 17. Bay leaves, the superhero against pantry bugs. Have you ever opened a bag of flour only to find tiny bugs having a little party inside? It's not only gross, it can ruin any recipe before it even starts. But British grandmothers have long had a simple trick: drop a dried bay leaf into the bag or container of flour. It sounds a little funny, but the essential oils in the bay leaf naturally repel insects without using chemicals or plastic. You might not even notice the bay leaf on duty in the flour, but quietly it keeps the flour clean. A small secret that works wonders. The flour stays fresh, aromatic, and bug-free. The funny part is, if you tell friends I protect my flour with a bay leaf, they'll probably give you a look, like, are you serious? But when they open the flour weeks later and it's still perfect, they'll have to admit, grandmothers really know what they're doing. Story 18. Potato water, the secret to soft, flavorful bread. Did you know that the water you usually pour away after boiling potatoes can be a golden secret for soft, aromatic bread? In many British kitchens, grandmothers know a simple trick: save the potato water, let it cool, and use it instead of plain water when kneading bread dough. It sounds unusual, but the science behind it makes perfect sense. The starch in the potato water helps the yeast rise faster, makes the dough more elastic, and results in bread that is soft, fragrant, and retains moisture longer. The interesting part is, this trick doesn't require any special ingredients, isn't expensive, and is easy to do. Some modern bakers still use this tip, even joking. A perfect loaf of bread can start with yesterday's pot of boiled potatoes. And the funny thing is, all it takes is a little patience and a pot of potato water to elevate your home-baked bread from decent to bakery quality. Delicious. Story 19. Boiling eggs, start with cold water. Everyone thinks boiling eggs is simple. Put them in a pot of boiling water and wait. But if you've ever tried, you know eggs often crack, the whites spread unevenly, or the yolks are inconsistent. Sometimes overcooked, sometimes underdone. In the UK, grandmothers and experienced cooks have a small trick: place the eggs in cold water before turning on the heat. As the water slowly heats up, the eggs cook gently and evenly from the inside out. The whites hug the yolks perfectly without separating. The yolks stay soft, smooth, and retain their bright color. The great thing is, this trick doesn't require any special tools, just a bit of patience. Some chefs even reveal starting a pot of eggs in cold water can save your entire breakfast. And the funny part is, many people trying this for the first time wonder, all these years, have I been boiling eggs completely wrong? Story 20. The trick for juicy meat, let it rest after cooking. You've just finished roasting a piece of beef, chicken, or ribs that looks perfect. The aroma fills the kitchen. Everything is ready to eat, but you don't know one crucial step: letting the meat rest after cooking. If you cut it immediately, the juices run out, the outside becomes dry and tough, and the inside loses its tenderness. That's why many people are often disappointed with homemade meat dishes. Professional chefs and British grandmothers all know this trick. Place the meat on a cutting board, loosely cover it with foil, and let it rest for 5–10 minutes. During this time, the muscle fibers relax, the juices redistribute, and every slice retains moisture, tenderness, and full flavor. The funny thing is, many people are always eager to cut the meat right away, but with just a few minutes of patience, you'll notice the difference immediately. The meat is no longer dry, it's like it just came out of a fancy restaurant. Story 21. The leftover wine. Freezing trick, no waste, better cooking. Have you ever opened a bottle of red or white wine, had a sip, and then ended up with half a bottle with no idea what to do? Pouring it out feels wasteful, and leaving it for a few days makes it sour and loses its flavor. A very simple trick that many British chefs use: pour the leftover wine into an ice cube tray and freeze it. Once frozen, you have small wine cubes ready for cooking, deglazing a pan, braising, or adding to risotto. These wine cubes retain their full flavor, don't go to waste, and are super convenient. The funny part is that at first many people think freezing wine, will this get me drunk? But in reality, you're saving wine and enhancing your dishes. A single wine cube can turn an ordinary stew or sauce into something restaurant quality. And the best part, you found a way to use leftover wine that you'd normally toss just with a few minutes in the freezer. Story 22. The trick to crisping up soft snacks. You open a bag of chips or tortilla chips you left from yesterday and realize they've gone soft, limp, and lost all that original crunch. Many people would exclaim, "Oh no, time to throw them out." But there's a very simple trick that British grandmothers still use. Spread the snacks on a baking tray and pop them in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius for about 5 minutes. As the heat passes through, excess moisture evaporates and the snacks become crunchy again, just like when you first opened the bag. The best part is the flavor stays intact, nothing burns or tastes bland. The funny thing is, when you try this trick for the first time, it feels like you're bringing food back to life. From a limp bag of snacks in just 5 minutes, you have a perfectly crunchy treat for movie nights or parties. And the great thing is, this trick costs nothing, just an oven and a little patience. Story 23. The butter trick for boiled corn. Have you ever boiled corn and then struggled to spread butter over every kernel, only to have it slide off, leaving uneven patches of yellow and white? Many people think, maybe I need cold butter or unsalted butter to make this work. But pub chefs and British grandmothers have a very simple trick. Add a little butter to the boiling water as soon as it starts to boil. By the time the corn is cooked, each kernel is already coated with a thin, even layer of buttery goodness, perfectly fragrant and ready to eat. No more slipping butter or missed kernels. The funny part is, this trick sounds odd at first. Butter in boiling water. Is the corn supposed to soak in it? But the results are surprisingly delicious. The corn comes out perfectly cooked, fragrant and buttery, and the whole family eats every kernel without needing to spread butter manually. A small trick that's incredibly effective, turning ordinary boiled corn into a dish that gets everyone nodding in approval. Story 24. The superhero wet towel under the cutting board. If you've ever chopped vegetables, meat, or bread on a cutting board that keeps sliding around, you know how terrifying it can be. A freshly cut carrot slice, and suddenly the board slides like it's trying to escape. You grab it quickly, but your hands slip, the knife wobbles, and the risk of cutting yourself is real. But grandmothers and experienced cooks have a very simple trick. Place a damp towel under the cutting board. It sounds almost too easy, but the effect is surprisingly effective. The towel adds friction, keeping the board firmly in place on the counter. You can chop comfortably, every slice is neat and safe. The funny thing is, this trick doesn't require special tools or modern gadgets. A crumpled kitchen towel from the laundry works perfectly, acting like a silent superhero, keeping the board in place. Just one simple step keeps you safe and lets you cut everything neatly without sweating over a sliding board. Story 25. The old bread trick. Better toast. Have you ever bought a brand new loaf of bread, confident you'd make perfect toast? Then the result? The outside burns golden while the inside stays wet and soft, almost like dough. It sounds counterintuitive, but British grandmothers have known for ages, slightly older bread makes the best toast. When bread sits for a day or two on the counter, it loses just enough moisture, allowing the oven's heat to distribute evenly. When you toast it, the bread becomes crisp from the outside and no more burnt crust with soggy insides. The funny part is, many people always think fresh bread is best, but in reality, a brand new loaf is the enemy of perfect toast. A small trick with huge impact. Just let the bread rest a bit before toasting, and you'll get evenly crispy, fragrant slices that make the whole family nod in approval. So old bread isn't bad, it's the secret to perfect toast. Story 26. Leftover teabag trick. Who says tea is just for drinking? In England, tea can even save bland soup. An experienced housewife revealed her secret: if yesterday's sauce or soup is too weak, don't rush to add salt or spices. Instead, drop in a used tea bag. Just a few minutes, the color deepens, a warm aroma rises, and a gentle umami flavor appears, as if the soup has been upgraded to a 5-star restaurant. Sounds crazy, right? Everyone who tries it is surprised. Tea and soup actually tastes good. The trick is to use strong black tea. No floral blends, steep a few minutes, then remove the bag. The best part, it uses leftover tea while creating rich flavor. Economical yet fancy. Some young chefs tried it and exclaimed, "Who knew leftover tea could turn bland soup into something amazing?" Story 27. The pinch of mustard, boosting mac and cheese flavor. Mac and cheese sounds simple, just pasta and cheese, cook it up and you're done. But if you've ever tried making it at home, sometimes the melted cheese tastes a bit flat and the dish lacks depth. Some chefs and British grandmothers have discovered a tiny but powerful trick: add a pinch of mustard powder to the cheese sauce. It sounds a little strange, right? Mustard powder and cheese, but just a small amount deepens the flavor, making the cheese taste richer without adding any heat. The result is mac and cheese that's creamy, fragrant, and has double the flavor while keeping the smoothness of the cheese. The funny part is, when you share this trick with friends, many will look at you like, "What, mustard and cheese?" But the moment they try it, all they can do is nod and say, "Wow, this mac and cheese tastes way better." Story 28. A splash of beer, perfectly crispy batter. Have you ever tried making batter for fish, chicken, or potatoes only to end up with a heavy or unevenly crispy coating? Some British pub chefs have long known a very simple trick: add a little beer to the batter. It sounds strange, but when you mix the batter with beer, the carbon dioxide creates tiny bubbles that make the fried coating puff up, crisp and light. No special flour or complicated technique is needed. Just a splash of beer is enough to make the batter golden and crunchy. The funny part is, the first time people hear this, they usually think beer in the batter. Are we cooking or making cocktails? But when you try it, you'll realize the fried food comes out fragrant, crispy, and with a subtle extra flavor that makes the whole family nod in approval. Unbelievable, just adding beer makes the batter so much better. Story 29. The baking soda trick, fluffy cloud. Like scrambled eggs. Have you ever made scrambled eggs only to find them a bit dry, rubbery, or looking like a piece of rubber? Many British chefs and hotel cooks have long known a very simple trick: add a tiny pinch of baking soda to the eggs before whisking. It sounds strange, but the baking soda creates a slightly alkaline environment, slowing down the coagulation of proteins, which makes the eggs fluffy, soft, and cloud-like when cooked over low heat. Just a very small amount, about 1/8 teaspoon for 3 eggs, keeps the eggs from tasting soapy or turning overly spongy. The funny part is, the first time you try this trick, people often doubt it. Scrambled eggs need baking soda. But when they taste it, everyone exclaims, "Wow, these eggs are smoother and fluffier than any scrambled eggs I've ever had." With just a pinch of baking soda, ordinary scrambled eggs become restaurant-style luxury eggs. Story 30. The magic sugar cube, balancing bitter stews. Have you ever cooked a pot of stew, meat and vegetables, and noticed it tastes a bit bitter, or the tomatoes/veggies made it too acidic? Many pub chefs and British grandmothers have a very simple yet magical trick: drop a small sugar cube into the stew. It sounds odd, right? But the sugar doesn't make the dish sweet. It balances the bitterness, softens the overall flavor, and makes it taste more rounded. The amazing part is, just one sugar cube and hardly anyone will notice you intervened in the stew. Guests or family will say, "Wow, the flavor today is incredible. You must have simmered the stew for hours." The funny thing is, this trick is extremely simple but preserves classic British cooking traditions, using a tiny, inexpensive ingredient to achieve surprising results. One small sugar cube, and your homemade stew suddenly tastes like it was made by a professional chef. Story 31. The real secret of British cooking. Many people think that good cooking requires complex recipes, expensive tools, or rare ingredients. But grandmothers and experienced chefs in the UK know a secret that few expect: real success comes from small, simple tricks passed down through generations. From sprinkling salt on eggplant, dropping a tea bag into gravy, to adding a tiny sugar cube in stew, these are all slightly crazy yet incredibly effective techniques. It sounds strange, but these little tricks make dishes tastier without spending an extra penny. The funny part is, many people hear this and exclaim, "Really good cooking just needs a few small hacks." But when you try each trick, you realize the secret isn't in the recipe, it's in the subtlety, experience, and a touch of madness from generations past. These small tricks are what give British cooking its unique, unforgettable flavor. Wow, we've just gone through 31 British cooking hacks that sound weird, but actually, work surprisingly well. Who would have thought that a tea bag in gravy, an ice cube in a burger, or a tiny sugar cube in stew could make food taste this good? What about you? Which trick in the list surprised you the most? Or do you have a crazy kitchen hack you want to show off to the world? If this video made you laugh or left you amazed, don't forget to like and subscribe. Next time we'll explore even stranger kitchen secrets that are guaranteed to leave you jaw-dropped.